Now, Zoro versus King. Now, Zoro versus King, we saw that go down, right? But I'm talking about if Zoro didn't have to go through all that shit with Kaido. See, because he went to the rooftop, remember? And if you know what I know about Zoro in that situation, he had low health bars. Now you might be like, oh well, Zoro got himself healed up by Chopper. It wasn't one of those things where he got the treatment and then Chopper was like, stay off of your legs for a couple days and then like fully get properly healed. It wasn't like that. It was like, I'll give you like some anesthetics and like some shit to like numb the pain, but that shit's gonna wear off. And when it wears off, you're gonna feel like you're gonna feel a lot of fucking excruciating pain after that, you know numbing agents and shit like that, you know adrenaline shots and or whatever he hooked him up with, and it was just for like a temporary thing. It wasn't one of those things that fixed everything. And then he went into the fight with King and he beat him extreme diff. Now let's think about Zoro being at 100% health bars. This is not one of those kind of fights that's close anymore, like not as close as it was before. Now Zoro still has to like learn some shit about King, but it's not like that. Like this man can probably still go help somebody fight afterwards, you know, on some real shit. So Zoro versus King, happens. And it's just like he doesn't even go to the rooftop. He finds King and he starts fighting in this scenario. So strength goes to Zoro. Zoro was already, deflecting King's attacks and shit like that, and this is a big guy. King's big, he's throwing his head back and shit like that, with his, three swords out. And this is when he was injured. This is what the anime showed. Now imagine this man with full health bars doing this shit. He's strong, and I'm not saying King's weak, but Zoro, he got that. Speed, I give it to Zoro. Um, with him at full health bars, he's gonna be able to move faster. But you gotta also bring up that situation with Enma. But Enma, Green Angel, Enma, it drains his health and shit, it tries to steal his energy, you know, and then he has to like get the sword's permission to like use it. But like my whole thing is if he's like already at full health bars, right, and he's going into the fight with King, he doesn't have to worry about that too much. Maybe at the beginning of the fight, but once he's locked in and he's like figured out what's going on with King's, durability, and King still has the durability over Zoro, and Zoro's gonna still get, damaged. But we know Zoro to be an endurance monster. Come, if I'm bleeding, if I'm like, bones fractured, I don't give a fuck. I'm still, running that shit. You know, I'm not going down. You know, he has that endurance like that. Intelligence goes to King, you know. Experience also goes to King, you know. He's been around for a while, Before Zoro was even a pirate, he was already doing shit with Kaido. Um, so there's that. And then close skills go to Zoro. Zoro doesn't have like many long range attacks like King does. Range skills go to King. And then recoup, that goes to Zoro, slightly. It's like the Linearian DNA, right? It don't give you healing abilities. It allows you to not take damage. It's like armor. That's what durability is, right? It's like your armor. You're not being damaged. It takes a lot to damage you. Not your health bars are going up. And the only reason I say that is because it's one of those things that I have in the list, you know. And I just think he recovers better. We've seen him time and time again. And King, we don't really know. But we know that he has, the durability, and he has, intelligence. He has experience. He has, range skills. You know, and then the hacks go to Zoro, and this is why the hacks go to Zoro. So we have King, right? King the Wildfire. He has his Lunarian blood. He has the Pteranodon Devil Fruit, and then he's also a swordsman on top of that. To some degree, or he's a guy with a sword. that uses it a little bit, but he's not actually a swordsman like Zoro. Zoro's actually a swordsman. Then this man has armament hockey and conquers hockey now. He has conquers hockey now, and then he has um, he has Ashura. He can pull out Ashura against fucking King here, and he can, because he's not fighting against Kaido, right? In this scenario, he's going straight for King. He's like Luffy, you go up to the rooftop and handle that business. I'm gonna find his second in command and I'm gonna take his ass out, and I'll meet you afterwards. In this scenario, environment does go to King though, because this is happening in Onigashima, and he knows about Onigashima because he's been there and done that. So when it's all said and done, Zoro actually wins this high difficulty. And I only say that because Zoro has to figure out, the flame thing. Now, without figuring that out, I would say this shit's like mid to high diff, but I'm gonna say it's high diff because he still has to figure out, like, how his Lunarian, DNA and all that shit works, like with the flames and why this guy taking damage. But once he figures that out and he's using, Conqueror's Hockey coded, he uses that Astra, he's done. And then Zoro can actually, he has enough health bars left to like even like help out a little bit in the fights going on in Onigashima. If he's going into this fight with full health bars, no going onto the rooftop to help, all them out. They can figure that shit out themselves, and he could like go help them out after he finishes off King. But it's a high difficulty fight in Zoro's favor. So be cool, call in the corner, and let me know what you think about that in the comments below.